So the very first Hall of Horrors book that I read is this one, and it happens to be a shrinking story. Ironic, isn't it? Because I am not personally a fan of the shrinking stories. I think that the trope is all right when it comes to kids horror, but there are a lot of shrinking horror stories for kids, which shows its popularity. But they never personally hit home for me due to numerous factors, mostly just it being it's not my cup of tea. I always feel like it ends up going down the same route. And most importantly, it hits home for me, all right? Because I deal with my own shrinking horror story, which is the shrinking of my bank account, all right? Now that's terrifying. That is one of the scariest things you could ever imagine or ever have to experience. And it may or may not have to do with correlation to how many Chipotle bowls or Hershey Sundae pies from Burger King I may or may not buy, all right? But again, not my favorite trope, but it is the first book that I read from Hall of Horrors, and it was a shrinking story, so I came in with an open mind. And how do I feel about it overall? It was fun. I would say it's a fun read. It's a decent read. I would recommend it to everybody, but it's just a little bit above average of a story, mostly because of my issues I have with the ending climax and the direction they go towards the end of the book, as I feel an initial direction that they kind of baited you with would have been the better and more preferable route to go down. So anyway, let's get into this review. Coming back from my finals, that's right, my college semester is now done. So I don't have to worry about doing those stupid finals, doing studying. I can now focus on my YouTube channel, both of my YouTube channels. And for you guys, that means you're going to be getting a lot more horror reviews and a lot more content. Because for those who don't know, I am severely behind. That's right, I am incredibly behind on reviewing because I have watched so many episodes of TV shows. I have read so many books that you guys will have a lot of content coming out, but that means I'll be uploading a lot more frequently. So hopefully that can make you guys a little bit happy. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about the first Hall of Horrors book that I read, and I believe it's the second in the series, The Night of the Giant Everything, which if you can't tell from the title, it's a shrinking story, all right? I read this a while ago, so forgive me if my knowledge may or may not be up to par, as I believe I already forgot the name of the main character. Forgive me, again, I read this very, very long ago. So I'm going to get into a brief plot synopsis without giving too much away, all right? So this book starts off with a kid, which again, I forget his name. Sorry, everybody. Forgot his name, but you can look it up. Main character is basically a magic fan, right? Now, this may seem like an outdated hobby of a kid, and honestly, I'd have to agree it is pretty outdated, but in my opinion, him being a fan of magic and doing magic and performing on stage is pretty quirky, and it is pretty fun. So he's a kid who loves to do magic and perform, and there's an upcoming talent show that's about to come up, and two of his friends, I believe their names are Ava and something else. I remember Ava because I think she was important to the story, but Ava and the other one, maybe it was Courtney, I don't know. Ava and Courtney, I think they are basically his friends, and they are basically kind of his assistants to this magic show that's going to be happening. So he's going to be performing a magic show at the talent show that's going on at his school, and he's going to be performing a magic act, and these guys are essentially his two assistants. However, it's not a fun gig. The reason being because this guy is a prankster, right? He's a comedian. His whole family is funny. He's known for being funny, and that's why he likes being a performer. So he's always sort of like messing around with them, pulling little pranks on them, kind of annoying them at times. And he's a big bombastic kid. He likes showing off his personality. And essentially, he's getting ready for this talent show that's coming up, and he needs their help. But he keeps on getting them annoyed, and they're sort of threatening that, we're not going to help you if you keep annoying us. We love your act. You're a great performer, but, relax with that. And then as the story goes on, you basically sort of see some of the more antics he keeps on doing. He kind of keeps pushing the buttons of these two girls that are supposed to help him and keeps pulling pranks and unfortunately keeps on kind of clowning them and getting them into trouble. And it gets to the point where basically his talent show act is coming up and he's, I guess, at one of their houses trying to help them out with cooking or something. and he ends up trying to do a juggling act where he's juggling eggs, and all of the eggs fall out of his hand and fall right on top of their heads and make a giant mess. So this is their breaking point. They're like, you know what? We're not going to help you. We're done. And he has to beg them to come back. He doesn't want to mess up this act because his whole thing as a character is that he loves performing. Whenever he feels like he's on stage, he feels like he's alive. He feels like he's doing everything he's supposed to be. His home, or his second home, I should say, is on the stage. And just a little side note, I think that this makes him one of my favorite characters in terms of an MC, because again, even though I don't remember his name, forgive me, but I like the fact that he's a guy who's willing to perform, a guy who's willing to make people laugh, and he feels comfortable doing that, because in a sense, that's what I try to do with you guys when I record these videos or I make out content. I want to make you guys laugh. This is sort of kind of like a friend talk, but also a performance in a sense. So I can kind of relate to that sentiment. I've always been more comfortable performing in front of people or just making people laugh or kind of being a public speaker. And this guy feels the exact same way, so I kind of resonate with him. And even though his hobby of magic is kind of outdated, I do find it quite, I guess, unique for his character. And again, it's not like magic is completely dead. There's guys like David Blaine out there and other people, but whatever. So basically, they get to the pushing point, and they're like, you know what? We're going to help you, but we're going to get revenge. So just be prepared. We're going to get revenge on you. And obviously, he's calling their bluff. He's like, oh, okay. Yeah, I know I messed up, but you guys are going to get revenge on me? Really? You guys think you're going to be able to get away with that? Little does he know, this is a Goosebumps book, so But he's basically like, all right, you know what? I'll call your bluff. You can go try to get revenge on me. I just need to see you guys on the night of the performance because I'm going to need your guys' help. And they're like, we'll be there, but watch your back, okay? And then he gets home, right? He gets home to his parents. And after all this happens, he sees that his parents are looking outside the window, and there's actually a bird, right? A parrot-sized bird that's on the windowsill. And it's kind of like this brown bird, kind of looks like a hawk, but it's the size of a parrot. And they really like it. He goes up to pet the bird, and the bird is basically like licking his finger, like a little tongue in its beak. He's licking his finger, it seems friendly. So he wants to hold on to it because they don't know who it belongs to, and he's kind of begging like, yo, let's keep this bird. So they decide to hold on to this bird, and they call it Bugsy. So this becomes officially like a new pet for them. And now they have this new pet, and his performance is coming up, and he goes up on stage. He performs, he does extremely well, everything goes right, and then all of a sudden, it gets to an act where he has to juggle, and in between him juggling, he has to drink a glass of water. He drinks a glass of water, and it tastes disgusting. His throat starts burning, he starts coughing and hurling, and the whole act, at least the end of the act, gets messed up. The crowd is laughing, but he's upset, and then he runs off stage. And he finds out from what his friends told him that they actually put chemicals into his drink, and that's what he sipped on, and he freaks out. He's like, you guys put chemicals from the science lab in my water? I mean, I get I did mean pranks to you. I get I messed up, but you guys nearly poisoned me on stage. But they find it hilarious. He didn't end up drinking it, so they're kind of he's freaking out, but they're kind of just laughing and throwing him off, and they're like, yeah, you were in this for all that stuff you did to us. This was deserved. And he's kind of bittersweet. He's like, all right, I messed up, but this was out of pocket. This is crazy. And then he goes home, and stuff is not all it seems, right? After that incident where he drinks the cup and he gets off stage and this whole thing messed up, he gets to home and he tries brushing his teeth, and he realizes that his clothes are getting baggier, and the room is getting bigger, and the ceiling's getting higher, and he's feeling a little bit out of his element. He feels like he's having a trip, so he thinks, maybe these chemicals are getting to my brain. Maybe I'm freaking out or something. And he realizes that as this stuff keeps on happening, that no, this is not a trip. He's actually shrinking. He's shrunk down to the size of like an action figure, right? Like now he's shrunk down to the size of an action figure. His clothes don't fit him. He's completely naked, and he realizes that maybe something involving the chemicals he drank might have ended up causing him to shrink. And then now he has to find a way to get back to normal and find someone that can help him out. And that's effectively the journey. You get this sort of like Toy Story journey involving this little guy running around, and you get these sort of different experiences he goes through. One of which involves him falling into a bucket of soapy water, and it's basically like a whirlpool. He almost drowns in it. One is like he goes under the couch, and there is a spider, and you get this horrifying scene, which is the best, I think, scene out of this entire book, which is this horrifying scene of this spider going after him, and the spider's going after him as the Bugsy bird, that's the new pet, is flying around and trying to pick at him because it thinks that he's an insect. Bugsy thinks that, this main character's an insect, so he's trying to play with this food before he eats it. And meanwhile, while the kid tries to run away from Bugsy, goes under the couch, and there's this eight-legged, multi-eyed, vicious spider with giant fangs coming after him, and it looks like a goddamn monster. And that's terrifying. All right, him trying to get away from both of those things were terrifying, right? Real life running away from kaiju kind of stuff. So that was scary. So you get all those different adventures throughout the book. And how do I feel about this book? So this book, it will be kind of hard to talk about without spoiling the climax. I don't want to talk about the climax too much because it switches around the book. But I did forget one part, which was that he has this piano teacher named Mr. Pinker, I believe. And when he was at the house and he was doing a piano lesson, Mr. Pinker actually gave him some cookies. And as he was eating the cookies, he actually, Mr. Pinker was watching him the entire time he was eating those cookies. And when he tries to go to the bathroom to kind of just like, I guess relieve himself, he finds a room in Mr. Pinker's house where it's this entire miniature doll set, right? It's like an entire town, right? This like, for those who've watched Trilogy, that kind of miniature town built into this room. And as soon as he tries opening it, Mr. Pinker comes up and shuts it and starts freaking out and getting angry at him. And it was the first time he ever saw the calm Mr. Pinker basically get all flustered. So that's sort of there to kind of add another potential reasoning as to maybe what's going on with the shrinking, right? You have this debate between the main characters like, okay, what exactly causes shrinking? Was it this reason? Was it the chemicals? Was it something else that I'm not aware of? And you kind of explore that through this Toy Story-like journey where he's trying to get help by going to his friend's Ava's house and trying to get people's attention. So the climax of this book is the main reason why I don't rate this book as highly as some of you may do, right? Because even though I'm not a fan of shrinking stories, I have to say that the first, I would say probably half of this story is entertaining. You have the main character basically shrinking down to the size of an action figure, and he's kind of going through the whole things involving being small, where he has, crossing small distances to us is like crossing like miles to him, and he can't get up his bed because it feels like a mountain. Dialing the phone, he has to slam down on keys with his feet, and it creates loud ringing noises that basically blast in his ear like thunder, right? Like the noises to the phone sound like thunder to him because he's tiny. He also has to deal with, potential dangers, like, again, falling into obstacles, dealing with small insects or creatures that are normal to us, even if we're scared of them, but they're like monsters and kaijus to him. So, and then obviously getting to his friend's house, going outside and trying to avoid all the different dangers of the outside world. It's fun, right? It's fun. It's predictable, but it's fun and decent enough that I would recommend it, where the main character's pretty funny. He's got a good personality. He's got good quirks to him that would probably let you be relatable to him or at least admire his character. His friends are all right, but mostly just him taking this the kind of like the shine of the story, where he's leading, he's got fun commentary, he's got this good setup to his character, and then now you kind of feel bad for him because when you have a sympathetic and cool and lovable character, when bad stuff starts happening to him, it resonates more with you and you feel more sympathetic toward that character. And the dangers and the threats that he faces being small are all predictable. I've kind of said this about shrinking stories, where all the sort of scares and setup end up being the same thing, where it's like, hey, insects, we don't think of them as dangerous, but when you're small, insects are monsters, or animals are monsters, or crossing distances like or like cars, like a car driving by, even though normally to us it's like, hey, watch out for that. Now a car is just like Omega level, Avengers level threat that's going down the road to you. Now it's like this, monstrous thing, even though to us it's just like, hey, it's a car, be careful, right? All those sort of things always happen with these shrinking stories. And this one's all right. I think it does a good job. I think it does a fun job with it, that you will at least have a couple of scenes where you do feel like that sort of tension, which is, again, the spider scene. If you've read the book, you know that one. The scene where he's crossing the road to Ava's house, that one's pretty good. The bucket one was all right. Bugsy's all right in terms of a scare. And overall, it ends up being good until that climax. And I don't want to talk about the climax much, but there's the last half of this story, or the last part of the third of this story, goes down a completely different route than what you think it is. One of the things that was set up as to being the reason why he shrunk ends up not being the reason, and it sort of throws you for a loop. But the actual reason ends up being much goofier and much more, I guess, cartoony or out there. I don't know how you want to phrase it, but it goes down a completely different route and a completely different trope as to the potential reasoning for this shrinking and how he can get himself out of the situation. And because it gets so goofy, it kind of took me out of the book a little bit. I was like, wait. I had a little bit higher expectations for what the reasoning was going to be, but this is like out of left field, just shoved in there. And the ending to this book, the twist ending to this book, I won't say much, but it effectively will make you close the book and be like, what was the point of reading that? Was it really worth it? You know, one of those kind of endings where you're sort of finish the book and you're like, was it worth reading this? Because it sort of retcons a lot of stuff. Maybe, you know, maybe, it may not. May end up in a certain place where you expected we would be past this by now, or something else would pop up. Nope, you just end up right back at a certain point where you were like, oh, I thought we would have resolved this. No, we're gonna be retconning some stuff. So yeah, that's what this book effectively turns into, which is why I say that it's a fun read up until the climax, and then the twist sort of will just probably make you a little bit angry over this book. But I give it a 7.3 out of 10. That's what I would give it. 7 out of 10s is usually average in terms of kids horror or Goosebumps books or episodes. I usually give 6.8s to ones that are, they feel average, but there are more points that kind of disappointed me than actually made me okay with it. 7.3 means that it's not the most extraordinary story. It is a fairly average story, and the climax and twist kind of bring down the score to make it average. But I feel like with those aside, the majority of the book is at least fun. It's at least, I guess, creative to a point, as much as you can, I guess, with the shrinking trope. And I guess you guys would at least have a good time reading it, specifically for the main character, and additionally for the fact that just the, I guess, different scares and different adventure you kind of get throughout it, it would keep you entertained enough to warrant at least a little bit higher than an average score. So that's how I would rate Night of the Giant Everything. And let me know how you guys feel. If you've read this book, do you disagree with me? Do you agree with me? I have a friend, Goosebumps Completionist, who is a YouTuber. You all probably know him. Very popular, and he's a friend of mine on Discord. Talk to him a lot. He actually finds this as a guilty pleasure book, so he pretty much enjoys it. I know Michael wasn't really that big of a fan of it. I know Monster Blood also kind of felt it was average, kind of like I did. So a lot of you may have different opinions on it. You may find it more fun than some of us did. You may really love this book, and you can explain to me why you really love this book. And yeah, just let me know in the comments down below. And welcome back to the BD Horror channel. After that long absence, I am back, and I'm going to be uploading a lot of content because I kind of have to in order to catch up on the list of stuff that I've done. So yeah, stay tuned for all the content to come. Let me know what you thought about this book. Feel free and consider hitting that subscribe button and hitting that like button, and commenting is a free way to support me and lets me guys know you like the content. Feel free to interact with me in the comments. Let me know all your thoughts and opinions. Maybe even recommend some books that you want me to read upcoming, and I'll try to take a look at them if I can. And yeah, stay tuned for next time, or hopefully soon, considering my schedule. And that's all for today. Deuces. Again, if this was all about shrinking bank accounts, this story would have easily gotten a 9.5 out of 10, because that's terrifying. And by the way, I gotta go get another Hershey Sunday pie. I'm fiending.